This unique Allard J2 was initially thought to be modified beyond restoration. What was the secret catalyst behind its creation? Find out right here on One of a Kind. When you restore a classic car, you're doing so much more than just fixing what's broken. Sometimes you have to be a detective to discover hints of the car's original configuration. At times, you have to be an historian to discern the automaker's original intentions. And sometimes, you have to be an archaeologist to find lost artifacts that complete the restoration. Restoring this incredible Allard J2 took all that and more. After enduring skepticism as to its authenticity, this Allard was revealed to be part of a super-secret development program inside a venerable old auto company. The Allard Motor Company was founded in 1936 in England. Allard made its name famous by combining a light, sporty English body with a powerful American V8 engine.
The car we're looking at is a one-off J2 Allard, and it's a one-off specifically because of the design of the front fenders. The front fenders are unique to this particular car. They're not the normal cycle fenders that we see on the standard J2 Allard.
The Allard J Series were built as race cars. Sleek and distinctive, a J Series Allard is easy to spot but hard to find, which is why when you see one, you have to move fast.
Unfortunately, Allards were never priced within my means, but I combed the ads constantly, and one Sunday morning in 1986, an ad appeared in the Chicago Tribune, and it was advertising an Allard that was a J2, but it had long front fenders. And I, of course, did not really believe that this was a J2 because I was a pretty good student of Allard lore and was not aware of any Allard having been made in that configuration that was called a J2.
Despite his doubts, the prospective owner raced to the seller's house, where the phone was ringing off the hook. There, he discovered why the asking price was so reasonable.
The condition of the car was absolutely terrible. It had been stored in an open-sided shed for 23 years with rain dripping down on top of the car.
As far as the condition of the Allard, it was a pretty rough car. There were a lot of panels that we had to make for the vehicle, some chassis work to be done, and once all of that basic is finished, then we built the body to the chassis.
It was terribly rusted to the point where the frame rails themselves were literally rusted in half.
Due to its poor condition, the potential owner had to balance his lifelong dream of owning an Allard with the seemingly impossible task of restoring it.
It is a pretty rare car. It is the only Allard that was made with those particular fenders on the front, referred to as pontoon fenders. When the car came here, I kind of questioned Dave because I had never seen one like that. They were always cycle fenders or no fenders. But when David brought the rest of the parts for that vehicle, they were the authentic fenders to that car. It could not have had any other kind of fender on it by the way it was bolted to the body, the type of brackets that supported the fenders and headlights. So it is, in fact, that only one.
But the question still remained. Why was this Allard so different from all the others? The answer required some detective work to find out just why this was such a unique car.
Shortly into the dismantling of the car, I was put in contact with a fellow who was the official keeper of the Allard records. In fact, he had worked at the Allard factory, and he was able to supply me with the original build sheet for this car, which showed that it had been ordered with special fenders, but it was shown to be very special as it came from the factory. And also, the wording that was used on that build sheet specified that this particular car was found to be prohibitively expensive to produce. Consequently, they made only one.
But what he found next was even more intriguing. Not only was this a once-in-a-lifetime Allard J2, this was a secret experimental prototype.
I found out that this particular car had been used as a test bed vehicle for a secret sports car development project that was undertaken by the Murray Body Company. The Murray Body Company had in past years been producing sheet metal fenders in particular and body parts for the Ford Motor Company. And in 1949, Ford began producing its own bodies and fenders, of course, and there was no longer need for the Murray Body Company to supply them with those things. Consequently, the Murray Body Company was looking for projects, and so they called this the Cornell Project, and it was regarded as a very hush-hush secret project in which they were going to develop a sports car which would have several unique features.
What other secret characteristics does this car hide under its hood? Find out right after this. This Allard J2 was discovered rusting in a Midwestern yard. It was originally thought to be modified beyond restoration, but after some diligent detective work, its new owner discovered that it was actually the prototype for a new generation of Allard cars.
They were shipped to this country without engines in them, and then they would put Cadillacs or Lincolns. Some of them had flathead Fords in them, and this one is a rare one because it does have the early 331 Cadillac in it. The Cadillac engine just has a sound of its own. In that particular car, you got to remember, there weren't many overhead valve engines back then. That was a pretty powerful motor for the day.
Being in the business 40 years, attending shows, things like that, I've seen a lot of Allards, but we had never worked on one. And then when Dave brought his here, we were excited because it was something different. We had never done an Allard before. His car, ooh, I don't know how this is going to look with full fenders on it. It's just not race car. Fortunately, when we were all done and we mounted the fenders back on the body for the first time, you went, oh, it's beautiful. It gave the whole car a different look. It just looked right.
The new owner carefully considered what he had learned in helping to restore the Allard J2.
The first step in restoring the car was dismantling it completely. And upon doing that, then, of course, we were able to determine exactly the extent of the rust in the frame. I realized that I needed to have either a new frame, which I tried to locate, or have it rebuilt. And we had to settle for making new frame rails.
The new frame rails helped stabilize the body, making it easier to rebuild.
After that frame was rebuilt, then it was a simple matter of rebuilding the body. All the body panels were there, but they all had to be massaged considerably, and so it took an awful lot of handwork to get the body to be returned to its original shape.
During restoration, careful attention was paid to the hallmarks of contemporary Allard cars.
For that matter, so there are other details on this particular car that are more faithful to how the original Allards remain. One of the things is the dashboard configuration. These cars originally were shipped to America without keyed ignition locks. And this, of course, I've done exactly that way, which simply means that we use push-pull switches for both the ignition as well as for the electric fuel pump.
As this rare Allard has made its way around the award show circuit, the new owner hasn't driven it as much as he would like. One reason not to drive it is to keep the car in pristine condition after putting in so much work. But the other reason has its merits as well.
More often than not, the publicity shots of Allards showed them coming up the crest of a hill, and it showed the wheels canted in like this because of the fact that they're up off the ground, and when they come back on the ground, all of a sudden your steering is not what you'd like it to be. It was what gave rise to the name Widowmaker, which these cars were called back in the day. It has old racing tires on there, which are appropriate for showing the car. It has a unique front suspension with the split front axle, and that in theory sounds like it would be ideal for road holding, but in effect there was more than one occasion where the term Widowmaker unfortunately was proved to be true.
Was this Allard J2 ahead of its time, or the ugly duckling of the Allard line? We'll find out right after this. Although there was initially doubt as to its status as an unmodified Allard, this J2 was discovered to be an experimental prototype for a new generation of cars.
I had wanted an Allard for a very long time. At the time I bought the car, I paid $9,000 for it, which was a pittance. For any normal human being, though, to see that car that I paid $9,000 for, it would have been a mark of insanity. But this was a good way to enter into the Allard world.
The Allard name remains legendary, so much so that the Allard brand has been revived, building fewer than 100 J2X MK2s for enthusiasts around the world. This Allard J2 represents a spectacular attempt to revive the fortunes of Allard in the United States, featuring improvements that were well ahead of its time, all of which make it absolutely one of a kind.